Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Mickey McNee, an interviewer for the Post Hole, the student-run journal of archaeology at the University of York. And joining me today is Lisa Westcott Wilkins and the cutest ever Ernie. Lisa is co-founder and managing director of Digventures. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lisa.
Oh, you're welcome. And I should mention that Ernie is auditioning for junior assistant trainee site dog, but because of the weather and the lockdown, he hasn't quite made it to site yet, but he's trying a day in the office just to see how it goes. So apologies in advance if there's wriggling and squeaking and stuff.
I don't think anyone will mind. We all are missing our puppy time these days.
Cool.
Right.
Well, happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. Glad to have you. And let's just jump right in. So, when you started your career, did you ever think you'd end up where you are today, co-founding essentially a tech-based company?
No, and I'm sure you'll hear this probably from everybody who's at a certain point in their career archaeologically. In fact, I didn't start out as an archaeologist. I started out working in finance in New York in the 90s. So if you've seen Wolf of Wall Street, you know what my life was like. And so I burned out really, really young. And it was not just a physical burnout, but it was an everything burnout. And I thought I'm way too young to feel like this. And just really figured out at that time that the only thing that interested me was archaeology and history. All my books and like my personal reading and stuff were around that topic. So I thought, stuff it. I really want to go back to the UK. I'd done a semester abroad here and stuff, and wanted to study. So I picked a university where I felt like I was going to match up best with my interests at that time, which is Mediterranean archaeology, actually. So I came here and did Aegean Bronze Age, a master's at UCL with Cyprian Broodbank. And it was like the best year of my life. All of a sudden, all the stuff that I wanted to geek out on, rather than people just sort of tolerating it, everyone was like, wow, that's really cool. And, here's this other thing. And so I knew I'd really found my people. And it just, I had a skill set, obviously, from banking that isn't common, let's say, in archaeology. And I just thought, well, this isn't really a career decision. I'm just trying to save my own life here and feel excited about something again. So I thought, there'll be somewhere that both these skill sets will be useful to someone. I don't know. And so through a progression of jobs, that ended up sort of being the case, both inside archaeology and out. And then in 2011, after the effects of the last financial crash were really, really biting in archaeology, that's when Digventures started. And it was really because I realized I was completely unemployable. Like there was just no job that I could picture myself taking where I would be happy and the people who hired me would be happy they hired me. So, the startup really came from a fascination with what was happening with crowdfunding in the States and, film and other creative industries, and wanting to apply that to archaeology and needing the freedom to be able to explore that stuff without someone going, but what about the money, and what about our board, and what about, all of that. So that's how I ended up here. And it's a constant experiment. Anybody who's watching who knows anything about DV knows that it is a constant experiment, and we hold our hands up. Things don't work all the time, but that's kind of the point, of doing something like this and constantly standing sort of outside of the normal way things happen and going, hang on a minute, why? And so that's why we're here.
That's amazing. And I really appreciate that. I'm a career changer myself. And definitely spent some time soul searching and thinking, what am I even excited about anymore? And then
and actually one of your questions to me, which comes at the end, but I'll switch it up and answer it now, just because that's what I do. Is what do we look for, when we hire, or what skills can I suggest, that anybody watching who wants to get into the sector can have? And I can tell you, we deliberately look for applications from people who have done other kinds of jobs than archaeology. If you've got someone who's come all the way through and just done archaeology, then they have a very specific viewpoint on things, and also their professional training in terms of what an office environment or what a team environment is like will be very much one way. And we're trying our best as a sector to clean it all up, but we all know that commercial archaeology sites can be really, really toxic places. And so, having that kind of experience, while you can dig a hole in everything, means a lot of times we have to unlearn certain, really competitive behaviors. So I look for people who have done some marketing, maybe, who have worked in customer service. Like if someone's been a bartender or even worked at McDonald's or whatever, they know how to deal with people. And because most of the work we do is community focused, or in any case now, because we all have to be more digital, knowing how to interface with people outside of your own immediate circle is really important. And we get a lot of applications from people who can't follow directions, who choose not to personalize, let's say, their applications and stuff. Really simple things that help us understand if someone really knows what it means to want a job. So I would say, get that real world experience. Don't be ashamed of it if you've spent time outside the sector, and see it as a benefit, because, I think now we're all looking for people who can do more than just one thing.
Those are great, great words of advice. And that kind of leads me to, our other question about how you're combining archaeology with your other interests, because I've also started and run a business, and it takes a lot of hats and a lot of drive. And you seem quite passionate about, just creating a positive work environment. What other ways, or in what ways does Digventures allow you to sort of combine your interests?
Yeah, I mean, archaeology is the USP of what we do, right? So, but businesses are powerful forces in local communities for lots of different ways. So I went into this because archaeology is the only thing that has actually sustained my interest over a long period of time. And it's the only thing that keeps me interested in the work that I do. And I do understand why I get out of bed every morning. But what I discovered through ending up in a leadership chair, which is something I never expected ever in my life, was that leadership is really important to me. And I am interested in the psychology of teams. I was an athlete for many, many years, and always looked for that feeling of togetherness in my work life and never found it, and realized that it's because you actually have to work to have that. That is something that's a deliberate choice, both on the part of the leadership, but on the part of the people who come into that team. So part of what is a personal interest that we try to activate in Digventures is very much that, we are a team. And it's hard, and we've turned ourselves over in terms of our staff now a few times, because it's very hard to strike that balance. And there are just certain behaviors in teams that people may be used to that are not cool with us. And I'll be very, very clear about that. And I also think that female leadership in particular is really important, not only around I am woman, blah, blah, like being visible, because obviously, 50% of archaeologists are women. Like, look on sites, look where you are. There are places where women are not in the profession, though, or are more rarely seen, and that's in leadership roles. And I really do wish that more of us who sat in those chairs were vocal about what it's like to be in those chairs, and why are we losing women? It's not just because they need to stay home with the kids. There are other things about being female that make it harder the higher you get. Interacting with boards, or interacting with clients who come from certain industries, let's say. Then there's, perimenopause and the changes of life, and the way that we need our work environment to support us as we go through the other side of things as well. All of that is what keeps women away from success in careers more generally, but also in a field-based or a tech-based type job. And so that obviously there are many conduits for talking about that. Sadly, not many that go straight back to archaeologists themselves. So, just trying constantly to be a consistent voice whenever I have the opportunity to talk about those perspectives, and, be the change. It's a very sort of, it's been co-opted, I guess, by a lot of different movements, let's say, but it really is true. And for anyone listening, there are, perhaps a bigger question about, rather than why I got into archaeology, is why do I stay in archaeology? Because I'm sure many of you who are studying and want to get into work know all the crap. Everyone will happily tell you how shit it is. You may have to edit that out. Sorry, I couldn't stop myself. How bleep it is. And the sector has really struggled to deal with professional conditions, pay and conditions and stability, has really struggled to deal with that over, the last 30 years. And I think that's a reflection of the people who have been in leadership roles and the things that are important to them. And so, we are trying to play catch up, not only around that kind of stuff, but around diversity and inclusivity, which will turn us into like a real aspirational profession. And, fixing pay is not the only thing that's going to make that difference. There are much bigger structural issues. And so I stay in the profession because, there are channels where you can actually be a part of making those changes and seeing really bright people who can add a lot to what we do, who care a lot about the study of the past and what that means in people's everyday lives. And we don't want to lose them, Perfect example, a very current example is the planning white paper. Many of you in your studies will have come across the planning white paper that the government has just issued, but in case you haven't, it's pedal to the metal on development. It will outstrip the ability of local authorities and HERs to deal with the rate of development. What does that mean for archaeology? There's stories in the news every day, just one from Hartlepool, where developers are not only proposing to do the minimum, but then doing their best to have to not fulfill those obligations either. And what that needs are committed professionals who can have those conversations at every level on site assistant up to site supervisor, up to the people in the office. And I think, once we can fix the sort of hierarchical issues in the sector and make sure that everybody understands what it means to be working in archaeology, then we'll be representing ourselves so much better in terms of the advocacy in our place in society. But that's why I stay. It's because there is a real chance to take a sector that has by and large really neglected itself and be a part of making it better within the next 5 to 10 years, because of the opportunity that all this development is going to give us to be heard.
That's fantastic. And I really just take away from that, so many people who are studying, we get really zoned in on let's get the degree, let's get a job, and we don't pay attention to the wider environment. And we need to be informed. We need to have opinions. We need to find ways of expressing, what we care about so that we can facilitate change and keep to improve and build the industry itself.
Yeah. And if you're, the bottom line is getting a job. I can tell you what it's going to look like. It's going to look like getting a 6-month contract as a site assistant, because that's where you have to start, unless you have other professional skills that mean you can go in at a different level, or the equivalent in post-ex, or, or research. But don't just take that job and think, right, and now I'm going to work my way up in this zone that I'm in. Join CIFA. I never would have been a person to say that before. And this is not me saying that I accept and agree with everything that they represent, but volume, like professional volume and people signing up and agreeing to a code of conduct is so important. Join CIFA, join Prospect. These are the two places where the change is actually happening. And okay, you're a site assistant or whatever, and going to site is going to make you feel, by and large, like, the lowest person on the totem pole there, but you still have a voice, you're still a part of a sector. And with all the big infrastructure projects planned and the issues now in bringing over a foreign workforce, there are big clients right now that are going, where are the archaeologists? We can't bring over the huge team of Polish guys or huge team of Scandinavians that we used to have digging our site. So they're going to be looking for people to get into their trenches. So in a way, the employment market for you guys coming out is going to be amazing. But what I would love to see is people going in as active archaeologists at whatever level they are. Ask the question, say, what? Why isn't there decent comfort accommodations on this site? It's in our contract. It's not good enough, I don't want to see the younger generation taking that stuff as though it has to be that way. You guys definitely don't have to accept it. And until everybody coming onto site at whatever level feels empowered and is empowered, then that's not going to change.
Wow, that's great. We have packed a lot into our time, and I appreciate it.
Oh, and Ernie just yawned.
Oh, Ernie. I don't know, Ernie, if you want to be part of this team, we're going to have to hear some, a little more excitement from you about this. No, that's great. I love your passion and your enthusiasm. I'm glad that you found a way to make your voice heard and share it with us. It really is helpful. So thanks for being here.
No problem. And anyone can get in touch with me after. I'm all over socials. It's not hard to find my email address. I'm happy to help.
Great. And we'll link Digventures in the bio in your video. So excellent. All right. Well, thank you again. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.